And welcome back to the CNN Democratic Presidential Town Hall at the Derry Opera House in New Hampshire. Thanks very much for being with us. You heard from Senator Bernie Sanders. Please welcome former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
You've obviously had pretty incredible past couple of days. Congratulations on winning in Iowa. New Hampshire has always been good to the Clintons. How does it feel out there?
It feels great. I've had just an amazing time. We landed in the middle of the night from Iowa, still pretty pumped up about winning there, and then got to work the next day. And I'm seeing a lot of old friends, meeting a lot of new people. I have an uphill climb, and I'm going to climb as high and hard as I can because I want to make my case to the people of New Hampshire. As you said, they're people that I feel very close to. They've been good to my husband, to me, my family. But what's most important is the First in the Nation primary. It truly is a great opportunity to get out there, explain what you want to do as president, present your ideas, and get vetted by the people of New Hampshire.
Bernie Sanders just a short time ago said he is the underdog here. Your campaign has said, you know, he comes from neighboring Vermont.
Yeah.
You guys are down in the polls. Do you feel you do better when you're fighting from behind?
You know, I don't know.
Does it bring out something in you?
Well, the intensity of the experience and the importance of trying to convey what's at stake in this election, because to me, obviously, Tuesday's a really big deal with the primary, but the goal has to be to prevent the Republicans from getting back into the White House and undoing all the progress that has been made under President Obama. And so I'm very proud of the campaign that Senator Sanders and I are running. I mean, we really have focused on issues. We share a lot of the same big progressive goals, but we have different ways of going about them. We bring different experiences. But we are contrasting on issues compared to the Republicans, who I think are contrasting on insults. And I think it's a better contest where we can take our ideas to groups like this throughout New Hampshire, get questions, have people vet them, and then let the voters make up their minds.
You talked about progressive values. Earlier in the day, Senator Sanders was asked if you were progressive. He said, some days. Are you really a progressive? In the past, you have said you plead guilty to being a moderate.
Well, you know, you asked me this question in the first debate, right?
And it's coming up at the end today.
And I said that I'm a progressive who likes to get things done. And I was somewhat amused today that Senator Sanders has set himself up to be the gatekeeper on who's a progressive, because under the definition that was flying around on Twitter and statements by the campaign, Barack Obama would not be a progressive, Joe Biden would not be a progressive, Jeanne Shaheen would not be a progressive, even the late, great Senator Paul Wellstone would not be a progressive. So I'm not going to let that bother me. I know where I stand. I know who stands with me. I know what I've done. But I don't think it helps for the senator to be making those kinds of comparisons, because clearly we all share a lot of the same hopes and aspirations for our country that we want to see achieved. And I don't think it's appropriate that, you know, if Planned Parenthood endorses me or the Human Rights Campaign endorses me, you know, they're thrown out of the progressive wing and put into the establishment. That's just not anything we need to do. Let's have a good contest of ideas. Let's contrast where we stand, and that's what I intend to do for the next couple of days.
It would obviously be historic if you were elected president, first female.
You think so?
Obviously.
Yeah.
Studied a little bit about history. But it seems like young women aren't rallying to this potentially historic moment. And I say this in Iowa. Among women under 30, Senator Sanders beat you by 70 points. Why do you think that is?
That's amazing. Yeah. Look, you know, I was very fortunate to have a great team of young people, men and women, supporting me. But I accept the fact that I have work to do to convey what I stand for, what I've accomplished, what I want to do for young people in our country.
Why do you think it is that they're...
Well, you know, I don't really know, Anderson. I think, here's what I want young people to know. They don't have to be for me. I'm going to be for them. It doesn't really matter if they If they are not supporting me, I will be their president. I will do everything I can to give them the opportunities they deserve. As I speak with young people across the country in Iowa, New Hampshire, and elsewhere, I do sense this real feeling of being somehow disadvantaged, put on the wrong side of American opportunity. And I understand that. I mean, the student debt problems, the feeling that the jobs that are out there are not producing the kind of income or opportunity that young people believe they should be able to get. But at the same time, I'm so impressed by the level, the intensity of commitment of this generation to, really going after discrimination, going after racism and sexism and the kind of abuses that LGBT community members have, looking for ways to bring more justice in the economy and the environment, fighting climate change. So I'm impressed with them, and I'm going to do everything I can to reach out and to explain why good ideas on paper are important, but you've got to be able to translate them into action to get results for people. I have a lot of experience doing that. I think I can deliver positive change for young people in our country, and I hope to have the chance to win their support.
What's wrong with a revolution?
Well, that's for Senator Sanders to explain, because that certainly is the core of his message to young people. I have a different take on it. I think the progress that we have made, and particularly the Democratic Party has made, has been hard fought for, hard won, and must be defended. So I want to defend the Affordable Care Act. It is one of the great accomplishments, not only of this president, but of the Democratic Party going back to Harry Truman. The Republicans are, the Republicans are determined to repeal it, and they've tried 62 times. Just to turn it back to the insurance companies. Senator Sanders and I share the same goal. We want to get to universal health care coverage. Before it was called Obamacare, it was called Hillary Care, as you remember. I fought really hard. The insurance companies and the drug companies spent millions against me. I know what it's like to go up against the status quo and special interests. So when President Obama succeeded, I was thrilled. I don't agree with Senator Sanders that we should start over, that we should throw our country into a contentious national debate about health care again. We're at 90% coverage. I'm going to fix what needs to be fixed. We're going to move from 90 to 100, which is a lot easier to get to than starting at 0 to get to 100. So we have a difference, and I think that is important.
I want you to meet some of the folks in our audience.
Sure.
This is Dave Scannell. He's a high school English teacher from Manchester. He says he's undecided. David?
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Secretary Clinton. You, the next president, will have as many as 3 Supreme Court appointments to make.
Right.
I'm wondering, beyond abortion, are there any issues on which you would impose or assert a litmus test? And if your answer is no, aren't certain critical issues like marriage equality, campaign finance, just so vital to what we believe in as Democrats that you would have to know the answer as to how these justices would rule before you make the nomination?
Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, I do have a litmus test. I have a bunch of litmus tests because I agree with you. The next president could get as many as 3 appointments. One of the many reasons why we can't turn the White House over to the Republicans again is because of the Supreme Court. I'm looking for people who understand the way the real world works, who don't have a knee-jerk reaction to support business, to support the idea that, money is speech, that gutted the Voting Rights Act. I voted for the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act when I was in the Senate. It passed 98-0 based on a very extensive set of hearings and research. Supreme Court comes along, they substitute their judgment for the Congress, signed by George W. Bush. That is one of our problems. They have a view that I just fundamentally disagree with about what the way we have to keep the balance of power in our society is. So they have given way too much power to corporations. They have given Citizens United the biggest gift to the Koch brothers, Karl Rove, and all of those folks whose values I don't share. and who are doing everything they can to try to turn the clock back. We have to preserve marriage equality. We have to go further to end discrimination against the LGBT community. We've got to make sure to preserve Roe v. Wade, not let it be nibbled away or repealed. We've got work to do, and here's how I think about it, because when I was a senator, I had to vote on Supreme Court justices. I'm looking for people who are rooted in the real world, who know that part of the genius of our system, both economic and government, is this balance of power. If it gets too far out of whack so that business has too much power, any branch of the government has too much power, the delicate balance that makes up our political system and the broad-based prosperity we should be working for in our economy is the worst off for it. So I have very strong feelings about what I'll be looking for if I am given the honor of appointing somebody to the Supreme Court.
Secretary, I want you to meet, this is Jim Kinhan. He's a Democrat who says he is supporting you.
Hello, Madam Secretary. Very pleased to see you. This may come a little bit from right field, it may seem, but it's very personal to me and resonates probably with many other people who are elderly dealing with health issues. The question is coming from me as a person who is walking with colon cancer. And I'm walking with colon cancer with the word terminal very much in my vocabulary, comfortably and spiritually. But I wonder what leadership you could offer within an executive role that might help advance the respectful conversation that is needed around this personal choice that people may make as we age and deal with health issues or be the caregivers of those people to help enhance their end of life with dignity.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being part of this great New Hampshire primary process, and thank you for your support. And I really appreciate your asking the question. I have to tell you, this is the first time I've been asked that question.
I figured that.
Yes, I really,
any candidate.
And I thank you for it, because we need to have a conversation in our country. There are states, as you know,
yes,
that are moving to open up the opportunity without criminal liability for people to make this decision in consultation by their families, even in some cases with medical professionals. But the issue is whether the medical professionals want to be involved or just be counselors. So it is a crucial issue that people deserve to understand from their own ethical, religious, faith-based perspective. So here's how I think about it. I want, as president, to try to catalyze that debate, because I believe you're right. This is going to become an issue more and more often. We are, on the good side, having many people live longer, but often then with very serious illnesses that they can be sustained on, but at some point don't want to continue with the challenges that poses. So I don't have any easy or glib answer for you. I think I would want to really immerse myself in the ethical writings, the health writings, the scientific writings, the religious writings. I know some other countries, the Netherlands and others, have a quite open approach. I'd like to know what their experience has been, because we have to be sure that nobody is coerced, nobody's under duress, and that is a difficult line to draw. So I thank you. I thank you so much for raising this really important, absolutely critical question that we're all going to have to do some thinking about.
Thank you. Thank
you. This is Michael Thiel. Michael, he's a married father of one. He says he's undecided. He's leaning towards Senator Sanders. Michael?
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Secretary Clinton. As Senator and as Secretary of State, you have a history of interventionist foreign policy that is troubling to many Democratic voters, including myself. As a voter who is opposed to the United States being the world's policeman, can you assure me that as President you would not expand our military involvement abroad?
No, I can't, Michael. I mean, I I'd like to be able to say I could, but here's what I can say. I have learned and have been, really in the crucible of making a lot of hard decisions over the last years. And military force must always be a last resort, not a first choice. That is one of the biggest differences between me and the Republicans. I worked very hard as Secretary of State to do what I could diplomatically to avoid conflict. That's why I worked to get the coalition together to impose sanctions on Iran so that we could get them to the negotiating table in order to test whether we could get an agreement to put a nuclear weapons agreement in place. I did that in large measure motivated by my deep concern that the absence of effective diplomacy might very well have sparked an arms race among some very unstable nations in the region and maybe even led to conflict. I will do everything I possibly can to avoid sending American troops abroad, getting us involved in military conflicts. But I can't in good conscience stand here and tell you that there would never be any circumstances in the time that I served as president where it very well might be in America's best vital national security interests. So I want to be honest with you. I will do what I can. I will stand against adventurism, ill-thought-out missions. I will not send American combat troops to Iraq or Syria. That is off the table. That would be a terrible mistake. We will continue to use special forces, and we have to because of the kinds of threats we face. The network of terrorist organizations, not just ISIS, but others who are part of this unfortunate network that stretches from North Africa to South Asia, pose serious threats to friends, allies, and partners, as well as to ourselves. And we've got to keep our country safe, and we have to work with the rest of the world to try to defeat ISIS, to end that terrorist threat. So I will be a very careful, deliberate decision maker when facing hard choices because I know what's at stake. And I know you can understand why there can't be, from me anyway, a blanket statement, but I want to assure you I will be transparent, I will be open, and I will explain to the American people if any occasion arises where we do have to take military action to protect ourselves or our close friends and partners.
I want to follow up. Yesterday on Capitol Hill at the Senate Armed Services Committee, the commandant of the Marine Corps said that he thinks, and I quote, all eligible and qualified men and women should register for the draft, talking about selective service. Do you think women should also have to register for selective service like men?
First time I heard that yesterday, and here's the reasoning as best I understand from listening to the testimony excerpts, that if we're going to open combat positions to qualified women so that they can compete to be Army Rangers, they can compete to be Navy SEALs, they can compete to be infantry officers in the Marines, then we have expanded the definition of the all-volunteer military. I have to think about whether I think it's necessary to go as far as our military officers are recommending. From my perspective, the all-volunteer military has worked, and we should not do anything that undermines it because it has provided a solid core of people who are willing to serve our country. The idea of having everybody register concerns me a little bit unless we have a better idea of where that's going to come out. Where I want people to register, I want every young person to register at the age of 18 to be able to vote automatically. And I think if we had a system like that, I would be very pleased about it. I have a hard time imagining the kind of national emergency that would require the use of the selective service system. So I just have to be better informed about why they're making this recommendation.
I want you to meet Rebecca Hutchinson. She's a former state representative in New Hampshire. She says she's undecided, and she's got a question for you.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, thank you. I feel in a way I sort of have a follow-up to the previous question. You clearly have very impressive foreign policy experience, and I've heard you point out to us that President Obama chose you and trusted you to be his Secretary of State. But I get stuck when I think about you voted for the Iraq War, which you now say was a mistake. What have you learned since that vote that could give me confidence that you wouldn't make a mistake of that magnitude again?
Oh, I think that's a very fair question. You know, I did make a mistake, and I admitted that I made a mistake, and in large measure, that mistake really arose from the Bush administration's approach to what they thought they could accomplish in Iraq, the very explicit appeal that President Bush made before announcing the invasion that getting that vote would be a strong piece of leverage in order to finish the inspections. And he made that comment. And the UN inspector, Hans Blick, said, give us the time, we will find out. Give us the hammer over their head, namely the vote, and we will be able to find out what they still have in terms of WMD. And the Bush administration didn't give him the time. And that was a breach of faith, in my view. But, you know, I gave him the vote in large measure because I thought that would give us the time and we would find out. Short of invasion, turned out not to be, and I really regret that that's the way President Bush proceeded. That would not be something you would have to worry about with me. If I tell you we're going to do diplomacy, we're going to hang tough, we're going to get answers, that's exactly what we will do.
I want you to meet Sean Burke. He's a Democrat from Derry. He says he is a supporter of yours. Sean?
Hi, Sean.
Hey, once you become the nominee and get elected, how are you going to defend yourself against right-wing attacks?
Well, Sean, I've had a lot of practice. You know, I could laugh up here, but it's not easy. It is a brutal experience. And when it first started happening to me back in the early 90s when I was working on health care, and, you know, I was just unrecognizable to myself what talk radio was saying, what Republican, you know, members of Congress and their allies were saying. I was just stunned. I could not understand how they got away with it. And I have had to learn to take criticism seriously, but not personally. And by that I mean this. The very fair question from Rebecca. People ask you questions or criticize you. Think about it seriously. There are lessons to be learned, often from people who don't agree with you. But don't take it personally so that it just paralyzes you, literally stops you in your tracks. And so now that I've been through this for so many years, Sean, my understanding of the political tactics that the other side uses is pretty well versed. They play to keep. They play to destroy. They are constantly doing whatever they can to win. And they have a history now going back, you know, 35, 36 years of going after people who they believe they can't otherwise stop unless they engage in negative attack. So right now, for example, a couple of hedge fund billionaires have started a super PAC to run ads against me. Karl Rove has, you know, solicited money from Wall Street to run ads against me. I view that as perversely flattering because clearly they know I mean what I say and I will do what I say and I will stand in their way and I will stop them from perpetuating an agenda on America that is bad for our democracy, bad for our economy, bad for our society. So I know I have to keep defending against them, but I'm the one who has the experience to do that. It's unlike anything you've ever gone through to be the subject of tens of millions of dollars of untrue, terrible attacks. And now the Koch brothers say they're going to spend $750 million to defeat the Democratic nominee. I'm still standing, and I will be standing, so don't worry about that.
Let me just quickly follow up. You mentioned attacks on the early 90s.
Right.
Do you still believe there's a vast right-wing conspiracy?
Don't you?
I'm asking you.
Yeah. It's gotten even better funded. They brought in some new multi-billionaires to pump the money in. And look, these guys play for keeps. They want to control our country. Senator Sanders and I agree on that completely. They want to rig the economy so they continue to get richer and richer. They could care less about income inequality. They solve their consciences by giving big money to philanthropy and, getting great pictures of them standing in front of whatever charity they donated to. But make no mistake, they want to destroy unions. They want to go after any economic interests that they don't believe they can control. They want to destroy our balance of power. They want to go after our political system and fill it with people who will do their bidding. I said today in Dover, I don't think all of the Republican candidates are so ill-informed about climate change that they say they don't know because they're not scientists. They're just doing the bidding of the Koch brothers. They're told, don't you dare say climate change is real, because we're in the fossil fuel business. So this is exactly what they are up to. And yes, it is probably, look, at this point, it's probably not correct to say it's a conspiracy because it's out in the open. There is no doubt about what they're doing and who the players are and what they're trying to achieve. And, they're shopping among the Republican candidates to figure out who among them will most likely do their bidding. So just know what we're up against because it's real and we're going to beat it. But it's going to take everybody working together.
I want you to meet Allison Pyatt. She's an independent torn between you and Senator Sanders.
Hi, Allison.
I'm sensing a theme here. First, thank you so much for all of that you've done for our country and for women.
Thank you.
My question is a number of factors, some you've just described, have eroded trust in you. What will you do to regain that trust, engender trust in Americans and me?
Well, thank you for starting by saying it's related to what I just said. And I acknowledge this as personally painful as it is. When you have been subjected to the level, the velocity of attacks that come every day, even if there is no factual basis to it, it's just normal for people to say, gosh, there's got to be something. Why do they keep saying this? And then we do that. And, I testify for 11 hours. There's nothing to Benghazi. They don't give it up. They keep coming after it. So I know that I have to really demonstrate as clearly as I can who I am, what I stand for, and what I've always done. I've always been guided by the same values. I have always listened to people. And I've always worked as hard as I could to produce results for people. So when I ran for the Senate the first time, and I was out there and, people were barraging. I was running first against Rudy Giuliani and all of that. And I was able to just keep going and tell people, here's who I am. Here's what I do. I want to do this with you. And I won. And then 6 years later, when I ran, I got a higher percentage. And then I did have, as you all remember, a really tough campaign against then Senator Obama. We saw each other very up close and personal. And he wins and turns and asks me to be his Secretary of State because he trusts me. He trusts my judgment. He trusts my experience. So all I can do is to just get up every day and work to do what I believe our country needs, find ways to help people, whether it's on mental health or addiction or autism or student loans, whatever it might be. And I trust the American people. I trust the people of New Hampshire to see my lifetime of work and service and to sort out all of the static and to know that I will work my heart out for you. And that's what I hope you will understand.
I want to welcome Rabbi Jonathan Spiro-Savet. He's an independent. He says he's undecided about his vote. Rabbi?
Hello, Rabbi.
Hello. Another rabbi, Rabbi Simcha Bunim, taught that every person has to have two pockets. And in each pocket, they have to carry a different note. And the note in one pocket says, "The universe was created for me." And in the other pocket, the note says, "I am just dust and ashes." And I want you to take a moment and think about what you would tell us about your two pockets. How do you cultivate the ego that we all know you must have, a person must have to be the leader of the free world? And also the humility to recognize that we know that you can't be expected to be wise about all the things that the president has to be responsible for.
Another absolutely wonderful question. Thank you, Rabbi. I think about this a lot. I feel very fortunate that I am a person of faith, that I was raised in my church, and that I have had to deal and struggle with a lot of these issues about ambition and humility, about service and self-gratification, all of the human questions that all of us deal with. But when you put yourself out into the public arena, I think it's incumbent upon you to be as self-conscious as possible. This is hard for me. I never thought I'd be standing on a stage here asking people to vote for me for president. I always wanted to be of service. I met my husband, who was such a natural, knew exactly what he wanted to do. I was happy to support him while I worked in the Children's Defense Fund and legal services and taught law and, had our daughter. I never thought I would do this. And so I have had to come to grips with how much more difficult it often is for me to talk about myself than to talk about what I want to do for other people, or to tell stories about, the man I met in Rochester whose AIDS medicine is no longer affordable. And that can grip me and make me feel like there's something I can do about that. So I'm constantly trying to balance, how do I assume the mantle of a position as essentially august as President of the United States, and not lose track of who I am, what I believe in, and what I want to do to serve. I have that dialogue at least once a day in some setting or another. And I don't know that there is any ever absolute answer, like, okay, universe, here I am, watch me roar, or, oh my gosh, I can't do it, it's just overwhelming, I have to retreat. It's that balance that I keep to try to find in my life, that I want to see back in our country. And it will be something that I continue to talk about with a group of faith advisors who are close to me. I get a scripture lesson every morning from a minister that I have a really close personal relationship with. And, it just gets me grounded. He gets up really early, send it to me. So, there it is in my inbox at 5 a.m. I have friends who are rabbis who send me notes, give me readings that are going to be discussed in services. So I really appreciate all that incoming. And the final thing I would say, because, again, it's not anything I've ever talked about this much publicly, everybody knows I have lived a very public life for the last 25 or so years. And so I've had to be in public dealing with some very difficult issues, and personal issues, political, public issues. And I read a treatment of the prodigal son parable by the Jesuit Henri Nouwen, who I think is a magnificent writer of spiritual and theological concerns. And I read that parable, and there was a line in it that became just a lifeline for me. And it basically is practice the discipline of gratitude. So regardless of how hard the days are, how difficult the decisions are, be grateful. Be grateful for being a human being part of the universe. Be grateful for your limitations. Know that you have to reach out to have more people be with you, to support you, to advise you. Listen to your critics. Answer the questions. But at the end, be grateful. Practice the discipline of gratitude, and that has helped me enormously.